Welcome to this overview orientation of the February 20th, 2021 meeting of the Presbytery of West Virginia. I'm Susan Sharp Campbell, Associate for Educational Ministry, and I will be sharing important information about this meeting in this video. As we meet on Zoom, you will be able to join this meeting using your computer, tablet, or phone by video and/or audio. It is extremely important, however, that you register for this meeting no later than Wednesday, February 17th, so that you will be on the list to receive the login information. This information will have a link to click on or the phone number to dial in using a touch-tone phone of any sort and entering the password. For those who are either new to Zoom or for those who are not completely comfortable with a Zoom Presbytery meeting, there will be two opportunities before February 20th to review information on being prepared, the process, how to seek the moderator's recognition, and voting. The first of these will be Tuesday, February 16th at 1 p.m., and the other will be Thursday, February 18th at 7 p.m. The day of the meeting, you will join the meeting using the Zoom link sent to you earlier in the week. Please note that the meeting will open at 9 o'clock and begin at 9:30. If you have not already done so, I would encourage you to download the Presbytery packet, which consists of 3 parts: the docket and committee reports with recommendations and/or information, a worship bulletin, and flyers about upcoming events in the Presbytery. You may want to read through the packet before continuing with the video, or follow it as I go through it in the video. Please read the entire packet before we meet, however, to inform yourself of the work we will be about on the 20th, as well as the ongoing work of the Presbytery. If you are not able to split your screen or use a second device, I encourage you to at least print the docket and the worship bulletin in advance of the meeting and have them handy. You do not need to print the whole packet. As we gather on the 20th, several key people to note are Andy Rice, pastor of Oak Grove Presbyterian Church in Hillsborough, the outgoing moderator of the Presbytery; Nancy Kissinger, ruling elder at Beckley Presbyterian Church, the incoming Presbytery moderator; Ed Thompson, our general presbyter; and Maureen Wright, our stated clerk. They will help to ensure that the meeting runs smoothly. The docket for this meeting can be found on pages 1 and 2 of the advance packet. Items marked with an asterisk indicate orders of the day. That means that at those times we will move to those items even if we have to postpone an issue and come back to it later. After the call to order at 9:30 a.m., we'll be asked to approve the recommendation that we suspend the Presbytery manual for this meeting to allow us to meet by Zoom. Because there is currently no provision in our Presbytery manual for virtual meetings, while the work we do on the 20th will be important, any actions taken will have to be ratified, that is, confirmed at our next in-person meeting. After hearing that a quorum is present, a quorum being 15% of ministers of word and sacrament, or 17, and 15% of our churches represented by a ruling elder, or 19, the docket will be approved. Next, we will be installing Nancy Kissinger, ruling elder at Beckley Presbyterian Church, as the moderator of the Presbytery for 2021. And Nancy Didway, pastor of Highlawn Presbyterian Church in St. Albans and St. Andrew Presbyterian Church in Pinch, as the moderator-elect. Our education focus for this meeting will be presented by Diane Givens Moffett, President and Executive Director of the Presbyterian Mission Agency, the Ministry and Mission Agency of the PCUSA. She will be sharing information about the denomination's Matthew 25 vision and invitation to actively engage in the world around us. Following the education focus, Nellie Howard, our Resource Center Director, will share information on new resources. While the Presbytery office is currently closed, if you're interested in checking out any of these or any other resources in the Resource Center, you may contact Nellie at resourcecenter@wvpresbytery.org or at 304-481-8027. We will then move to a time of worship around the theme of Matthew 25, using worship resources from the Presbyterian Mission Agency, including a brand new hymn. You will find the bulletin for worship following page 58 in the advance packet. Again, I suggest you may want to print this before the meeting. Worship leaders: Larry Davis, ruling elder at Clifton; Terry McDougall, ruling elder at First Presbyterian Church, Dunbar, and Don Adamy, pastor of Bree Memorial Presbyterian Church, represent the 3 churches in this presbytery that are Matthew 25 churches. In addition, Ed Thompson will be leading us in the reaffirmation of baptism, and Carrie Honecker and Kirsten White of Ronsford Presbyterian Church will be leading us with music. After worship, we will move into the business of the presbytery, beginning with the seating of new corresponding members in the presbytery. These are members of other presbyteries who are laboring within our bounds. If any visiting ministers are present, they will then be introduced. And then there will be an opportunity for ruling elder commissioners who are attending their first presbytery meeting in that role to be introduced. The consent agenda is next. It can be found on page 3. These are items that those planning worship deemed not likely to generate discussion. But if there is anyone present who would like to have the opportunity to address any of these items, that person can ask that the item be removed from the consent agenda, and it will be discussed under the appropriate committee report. Items on the consent agenda for this meeting are that the request for excused absences be approved, that the offering at this meeting be used to support West Virginia Ministry of Advocacy and Work Camps, also known as WVMAW. You may contribute to the offering using the Donate button on the Presbytery website or by sending a check to the Presbytery office. Please mark these February meeting offering. Other items on the consent agenda are that those who have successfully completed Level 2 in the Authorized Lay Preacher Commission Pastor Preparation Program since our last meeting be approved to serve as authorized lay preachers in the presbytery, providing random pulpit supply. Given that the Sacraments course will be held this April, this does not include the ability to preside at communion. And finally, that the ruling elders listed who have completed the communion ruling elder training be approved to preside at communion in their churches of membership. The next items of business are the appointment of temporary clerks who will assist the moderator and clerk with monitoring the chat feature of Zoom, which is how folks will be recognized by the moderator, and tallying any needed virtual votes, and the appointment of members of the leadership team who are present to serve as the committee on bills and overtures to process any new business as necessary during the day. Maureen Wright will then review the virtual procedural matters that can be found on page 5 in the advance packet. These matters include those who are participants in the meeting, that the only ones who are permitted into the Zoom meeting must be registered no later than 3 days in advance of the meeting, the method for establishing that a quorum is present, how to seek recognition in order to speak, and the deadline for new business to be submitted. Please note if during the meeting you get disconnected and try to reconnect, every effort will be made to readmit you. On page 6, you will find the procedural matters we will also follow. These include principles of parliamentary law, courtesy to all, one item at a time, majority rule, respect the rights of the minority, justice for all, and partiality for none, pretty much dealing with how to work and play together with others as we meet. As items are discussed, pro and con speakers will alternate, with individuals identifying the position they support. When one person has spoken on a pending question, all others wishing to speak will be heard before that person can speak a second time. It takes special permission for anyone to speak on the same question more than twice. Here you will also find provisions from the Presbytery's manual that guide us, including who has the ability to speak and who has the ability to speak and vote. Please note that in the final section on page 6 of the procedural rules, number 1 differs for this meeting. As noted above, those wishing to speak will do so using the chat feature or the electronic hand feature. When called on by the moderator, share your name, church, or relationship to the presbytery. Address your question to the moderator, and you will be muted by the Zoom host when you finish. As part of the procedural rules, you will find that the limitation for debating any motion is 30 minutes per main motion, with each speaker limited to 3 minutes per speech, although this must be voted on the 20th and approved by 2/3 of those voting. If there's an item you wish to speak to then, I encourage you to write your remarks down to help keep you focused and within the time frame. In the printed stated clerk's report on page 4, you will find information on correspondence that Maureen Wright has received and shared. There is also a list of those whose terms as members of the Presbytery's Permanent Judicial Commission expired in the last 6 years, as required by the PCUSA Rules of Discipline. Next will be Ed Thompson. His General Presbyter's Report can be found on pages 8 to 11. His written report lifts up the opportunity the pandemic offers us to review our ministry rather than just going back to things as we've always done them. Ed's report concludes with a listing of his activities during the months of November 2020 through January 2021. We will then move to committee reports, most of which have 2 sections. The first has recommendations the committee is bringing to the Presbytery for action. The second has information items about the ongoing work of the committee. The leadership team report can be found on pages 12 to 15. They are bringing the second reading of revisions to the Presbytery's Manual of Operations. Proposed changes on pages 14 and 15 will be voted on at this meeting. They have to do with terms of service for the moderator and moderator-elect, how the leadership team chair is elected, electronic meetings, and business that needs to be addressed between Presbytery meetings. The information section of the report notes that the leadership team is looking at the long-term financial stability of the Presbytery, working on dates and places for 2022 meetings, and is in conversation with the appropriate committees to review the policies and guidelines of the Presbytery. On pages 16 to 25, you will find recommendations from the administrative commissions to dissolve the Lakeview Presbyterian Church and the Pickens Presbyterian Church. These recommendations are in keeping with the request of each church's session. In addition to a report from each commission, there is a history of the church as we celebrate their ministry and mission. Sarah Specht, Program Director of Bluestone, will share the Bluestone Committee's report, particularly what is being planned for this coming summer. There is no written report for the Bluestone Committee. The Committee on Representation, in its role as the committee to nominate persons to serve Presbytery, will be bringing a recommendation for the chair of the Stewardship Committee and for a chair of the Vocations Committee. As with all nominations, there will be a time for nominations from the floor. But please be aware that if you wish to nominate someone to serve in either position listed, whoever is nominated must have agreed in advance to serve if elected. In your packet, the report of the Mission Committee is next, though it's most likely that this recommendation will have been approved on the consent agenda. The Nurture Committee's verbal report will be an audio or a visual concerning the Presbytery Youth Council. The written report has a great deal of information related to upcoming opportunities for growing in faith in the coming months. Many of these events have flyers at the end of the packet to share with others in your congregation. The Stewardship Committee report on page 29 highlights that the Paycheck Protection Program loan received in April 2020 has been forgiven in total. At the time of the Stewardship Committee report, Rocky Poole, our financial administrator and treasurer, will be reporting on final budget information from 2020, including budget versus actual expenditures, giving by congregations in 2020, and pledges and per capita from congregations for 2021, and the financial reports of the Bluestone Committee, Bluestone and Friends of Bluestone. You will find all of this financial information on pages 30 to 46. While most of the Vocations Committee recommendations are part of the consent agenda, there will be a time here to recognize those who have recently completed Level 2 of the Authorized Lay Preacher Commission Pastor Preparation Program and approved as ALPs earlier in this meeting. In the written report, you will find information on the ongoing work of the committee, particularly in working with inquirers and those in the ALP CP Preparation Program. They are also reaching out to those who should be repaying loans from the Rachel McClinic funds. The Vocations Committee report can be found on page 47. Following oral committee reports, we will recognize those ruling elders and ministers of Word and Sacrament who died in 2020 in the necrology report. Other committee reports to this meeting are only in written form and can be found on pages 50 to 57. I will highlight some of their work, but please read their entire reports. Just because they are written doesn't mean they're less important. Written reports include the following. The Administration Committee report on page 40 references its annual evaluation of the work of the General Presbyter and meeting with staff. On page 51, the Relations Committee reports that triennial visits are on hold due to the pandemic and highlights the availability of limited funds to support cooperative ministries or missions with multiple churches. The Committee on Ministry report can be found on pages 52 to 57. It includes approval of session moderators in churches without pastors, committee liaisons for churches in pastoral transition, waivers of rotation of officers, 6-month interviews with pastors, planning for the small church conference in September, and approval of covenants with stated supply pastors and lay pastors. The final page of this first section is an evaluation form. Please take the time to complete this at the end of the day and return it to the Presbytery office to help those who plan future Presbytery meetings. They take these very seriously. The second part of the advance packet is the Bulletin for Worship. As I've noted several times, you will want to have this where you can see it during the meeting. The final section of the advance packet has information about several upcoming events sponsored by the Nurture Committee and information on summer camp at Bluestone. Flyers include Festival of Faith to be held in March, Youth Council applications which are due at the end of March, an Equipping Disciples event on how the Bible came to be in April, the Expanding Your Ministry Toolbox course, Teaching for Faith, also in April, and also information on grants and scholarships for secondary education which are due at the end of April, and the Younger Youth Retreat, which is planned for a day in May. The remaining flyers highlight Family Camp and Venture Camp at Bluestone this summer. Commissioners to this meeting and pastors are strongly encouraged, to share these flyers with those who might be interested in their congregations. Include them in your newsletters, your bulletins. Get the word out. Since we've moved from snail mailing all of these things to emailing them, we rely on you to pass the word. As I've mentioned before, I encourage you to read through this packet carefully in advance of the meeting of February 20th. As we gather in councils, we trust that God's Spirit will lead us to discern God's will for our ministry and mission as we discuss issues together and make decisions together. So please come to the meeting familiar with the recommendations, but not with your mind made up, so that we can all be open to the guidance of the Spirit as we meet and talk and discern together. I look forward to seeing you on the 20th of February on Zoom. Thank you.